Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from YellowCat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. Has anyone ever furiously quit their job? Why? Did this have any unintended consequences? Part 5. I was working at a Canadian computer store after moving in with my grandfather to help support my family. I had just quit a company called NCIX that had gone out of business even though they were pretty good to their employees. I had worked as an on-site and phone tech there, and I have a lot of certifications that let me do those kinds of jobs. I did a great job there, and I also worked my way up at their sister company, Direct Canada. Anyway, I sent an application to the competitor for a tech job they posted not long after I moved. I was put in sales. I told myself, okay, fine, I'll swallow my pride and show how valuable I am as a tech by being an A+ salesperson. Oh boy, that was a waste of time. My boss and 2 supervisors were the only people who had been there longer than me. The store manager had just started and had already organized a union for everyone. And one woman who had stayed behind out of desperation told me everything. Because of the pay and hours cut, the old staff quit not even a week before I started. All of this didn't bother me. I was just going to keep my head down and do my job to move up the ladder. The manager was almost never at the store. When he was, he and the close group of people who worked there played a VR game in the back room. They taught me how to set up PC builds for customers and how to merchandise products over the course of a day, but I didn't have a login on the first day I started. One boss told me to use the login of the person who was already logged in, so I did that. Another week goes by and supervisor number 2 sees this and yells at me for not using my own login. I told him I didn't have one, and he said don't worry about the PC builds for now. He then left, probably to smoke. Also, this guy was terrible at micromanaging. He would tell me to do one thing and then ask me why I wasn't doing something else that I had no idea I needed to do. They finally gave up when I sold them 2 TVs, a sound system, and a laptop for about $3,000. The customer was buying for a business. It was fun to talk about video production, where display technology is now and where it might be in 10 years as I walked through the aisles. The best customer ever. We brought one of our work carts with us to load things on because the store is so big and I don't want to break myself for the goods by carrying them all by hand. In front of about 12 customers, the jerk manager walks up to me and the senior woman who can scan items to the POS. I still didn't have access a month after starting. He asks me why I'm using a work cart. I'm done with merchandising and I'm just helping this man get his things to his car, I say. Manager yells at me that we can't use a cart or take it outside because it's only for moving things around. Now, jerk manager has taken over scanning for himself so he can get credit for the sale. He just grumbles, fine, but come see me in the back when you're done. When I tell him I don't want to break the goods on the way to his car or while loading them, he continues. The customer's grateful that I helped him load these things into his van, and he tells me, don't worry about your manager, he just seems toxic, and we laugh about it. The customer and I share our Discord information, and since we talked about games, he invited me to join his server with his friends. We shook hands, and I went back inside. I go back inside, and the manager points to the break room. I quickly follow him there. It's hard to put into words how much he S all over me for taking the cart, but it came down to this. Store policy says carts can only be used inside the store, and it looks bad when you disagree with me in front of customers. I couldn't type this because he said it with so much more flavor, it would take a lot more paragraphs, but I kept my cool and finished my shift. As soon as I got home, I signed up for Uber and sent an email to the store manager that said, I'm sick of D-head manager. He's an indecisive bag of S. I'm resigning now as I don't think this company's a good fit for me. Even now, I'm happy I left that location. Right now, I'm driving for Uber and working for a courier service that pays by the hour until I can find a company and job as far away from retail as possible. One of the new employees added me on Facebook, which is how I learned that they had lost almost all of the people they hired and were now just bringing in workers from other stores to fill the gaps. I believe it's just the location I was at and the one supervisor who was a D-head, so I'm not going to post the name of the company, but it's probably not hard to figure it out. Together with an assistant manager, I oversaw shift closings. Usually close at 9 and out by 9:30. On this particular day, we were lacking in personnel strength. Myself, the assistant manager, and a cook were the only people present. Due to the fact that I had a very important commitment after work, I inquired with the ASM about the possibility of making an early start on the close preparations. My only recollection is that I had to arrive at the location on time, but I don't remember what it was. She was in agreement. In order to get out of the house more quickly, she suggested that we begin cleaning and disassembling things earlier than usual. After that, 8:30 arrives, which is the time that we were supposed to begin. She has made the decision that she's finished working and she has just left. It was impossible for me to complete any of the close work before 9 o'clock without using a second hand because I had a couple of customers ahead of me. The accumulation of my complaints had reached a point where this was the final straw. I instructed the cook to leave the store and said that I would clean it. I left the store in a state of disarray and filth after she had left, and then I locked up. But just to provide some background, I worked at this location for a total of 9 months. When I left, not a single employee who had been working there when I was hired was still working there. The number of people who left was extremely high. Every week, someone was hired, fired, or quit their job. In the span of 9 months, I had 4 general managers. When I entered the store the following day to hand over my work shirts, the proprietor was already present. He arrived, sat me down, and told me, "Listen, what happened last night is not okay." This occurred before I had the opportunity to officially submit my resignation. "We're going to have to let you go," which is a major disappointment. I laughed in his face and asked, "Really? You didn't think that the fact that I left the store and then came in here with a few shirts was a pretty good indication that I've already quit, did you?" He did ask me why I quit and why I chose the manner I did. I told him what happened, and he said, "I'm sorry that happened, but you had a duty to this store." Simply put, I responded by saying, "Not anymore, I don't," and left. 6 months later, he forced to sell the store back to corporate for a pittance of its original value after bankrupting it. I'd love to hear some scary HOA stories, part 5. In the summer, the temperature in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I live, easily reach 110 to 120 degrees. Like, it's been that warm or cool every day for a month or more. It's not raining right now. Both the front and backyards of our house have about 40% ground cover, 2 trees, no dead plants or weeds, and we can only water 3 times a week. Since my husband is allergic to grass, I had to cut it when it was green, even though I could not do it. There are clear reasons why some of our plants and grass died last year. We got a letter from the HOA with a $100 fine and 1 week to fix the problem. We tried to make the grass grow again. It was toasted. Then they have to pay $35 a week until we fix the problem the way they want it. You might think that my husband and I's health problems would make things easier. No. We chose to make a new plan for the yard. To get a new plan approved, we had to hire a landscaper, get a proposal, and then send it to the HOA. They could have taken up to 4 weeks, it took 6 to look it over, but they turned it down the first time. Then we went back to the landscaper who had to do all the research again in order to give us a new quote. They also had to find some new plants since the old quote was only good for 3 weeks. That's right. You read that right. After 6 months of this, we finally have a plan that has been approved so we can do the yard change. After 6 months, I didn't really care. I just told the landscaper to do it and promised to repay them later. I got a tape measure and measured every plant outside. I also measured the yard and did the math. I sent it in after it was fixed. They agreed to it. Up to this point, we've paid more than $1,000 in HOA fees because they kept sending us $100 bills every time they found a weed in the yard. I really did count 3 weeds one time. This is where things get silly. The checks didn't say they were good for the yard, so the HOA just put the money toward our monthly fees and marked our yard account as past due. They finally agreed to $200, and because they had so much red tape, they used the rest of the money to pay our fees. We do not have HOA fees for the next year or so. Not sure how long that goes on for, but that's the story. My dad is being sued by his homeowners association for $100,000 because he didn't keep his front yard up to their standards. I know it sounds crazy. I'm lost and don't know what to do next. To give you some background, my dad is getting old and has diabetes. The last year has been very hard on him and our family financially. We live in a neighborhood with a homeowners association that has a lot of rules about things like how to keep your front yard in good shape, etc. My dad wasn't able to take care of the yard as well as he could have because of his health and money problems. The association has chosen to sue because of this. The crazy thing is that my dad's yard wasn't worse than anyone else's in the neighborhood. That's why I think he's being picked on and pushed around. My dad has done everything he can to get this case thrown out, but the judge still hasn't done it. Now that the trial is coming up on Monday, I'm really scared they will win their case against my dad and he will lose his house for not keeping his yard up. Everything about this situation has been a nightmare. At this point, I'm not sure what I can do to get these people to stop. Get the media involved to bring this story to light or something. Edit. Thus, I'd like to make it a little more clear how this came to be in the first place. At first, the homeowners association told my dad in letters that they would charge him if he didn't clean the house. People said that shingles were falling off the roof, the grass wasn't cut well and had brown spots, and the driveway had oil stains. There have been changes to the yard, the roof, and the oil spots since the first letter. Over the years, the Homeowners Association has sent calls like this because my dad lives alone and sometimes leaves his yard alone, but most of the time, it was taken care of right away after getting one of these letters. When the first fees were put on, the house was pretty well taken care of, but they brought up new problems like cracks in the driveway. My dad thought this was crazy and tried to fight it. At that time, we looked around at the homes of the Homeowners Association members and saw that many of them had cracks in their sidewalk or driveway cement that were just as bad as his. We also saw that many of the lawns looked worse than my dad's when the fees were put in place. As the fight went on, more charges were added. A few months ago, they were offering to settle for $8,000 in legal fees, which my dad, again, thought was nonsense because he doesn't have that much money and wouldn't be able to pay that much. My dad's been fighting the case by himself until not long ago. He tried to get the Homeowners Association to throw out the case because of legal mistakes. For example, the case wasn't filed on time, among other things. But it looks like the judge didn't really hear him because the case is still going on. We've been fighting this in court for almost a year now, and we have gone through all the pre-trial steps such as discovery, etc. There's a free lawyer my dad hired, but my dad says the lawyer is very old and hasn't done much to help his case. The $100,000 they want is for a huge amount of lawyer fees they said they've racked up. He barely has enough money to make his house payments and has already filed for bankruptcy twice. If $100,000 fees put on him, he'll lose his house. People are asking me why I haven't mowed his lawn for him. Since they started the lawsuit, we've been taking care of it, but they still want to pay their lawyers. However, I believe it's a scam and that they're only acting this way so they can eventually sell my dad's house for very little money. Update, the trial was moved to next Monday. We're going to talk to another lawyer to get their opinion and look for any other cases that might help us. Yeah, hopefully we can win. Update 2. I have great news. We won. I was able to find a good lawyer who agreed to a fee in the event of a successful outcome. Anyway, he got the case heard by a different judge. Apparently the first one was a good friend of our HOA. My father is not the first one from whom they wanted to take away the house. In short, we managed to win. In the end, the HOA was exposed for their fraud, the old judge was fired, and the HOA itself suffered losses because they had to pay for their lawyers and ours, plus compensation for my father. Naturally, my neighbors did not like to pay dues and for lawyers. Booth was raised, the old chairman of the HOA board were removed from their positions, and new ones were elected. Now everything seems to have settled down. If you want to watch the part 4, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for your support.